guys, what's up? It's NihonTiger. Welcome back to VintageBeef Fan Server. It's starting to turn night here, unfortunately. But I'm all alone on the server right now. And as you can see, the actual melon farms are working quite well. I'm quite impressed with them. Design seems to be working pretty well. I'm not going to show what's in there. I can't show what's in there yet. But let's just say there's some melons and stuff in there, and the extra stuff that's in there is just temporary storage. I can't really show it off at the moment for various reasons, but today I thought we would kind of finish up this stage of the tree farm expansion, and to do that, we have one more thing I really want to do, and that is to take this whole side right here and kind of push it out. See where that lip is over there, that natural lip? I didn't dig that, but that's actually where the edge of the tree farm is going to end up, I've decided. So I have a lot of stuff to fill in here and a lot of stuff to pave over, but it's going to come all the way up here, and just kind of where this little notches right here is where it's going to end up being. But to kind of pass the time while I do this, I thought we would talk about something that I was actually going to talk about last time while I was building the melon machines, but I neglected to remember to talk about it because I was so focused on building the machines that I didn't end up doing anything else. So, it's actually interesting because it's something that I am interested in and have had some interest in for a while, but a lot of other people probably don't, and a lot of other people probably outgrew it. But that would actually, believe it or not, be Wrasslin. Yes, you know, the thing where people body slam each other and stuff like that. I still do watch it from time to time. Usually the guys over in the group we affectionately call Wrasslin, which is the well, that's perfect. But Wrasslin, or the wrestling NeoGaf community, we will sometimes we'll watch, you know, the WWE stuff just because we like to keep an eye on what's going on with that, or, you know, subject ourselves to other lesser forms of wrestling or indie wrestling or stuff from Japan. The stuff from Japan is usually the stuff that I watch nowadays. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's Japanese. It has everything to do with the quality and the style, which I'll talk about later. That's something I'll get into in a minute, so I can kind of describe to you the differences. It's not always the same around the world, so it's a little different product in different parts of the world. But yeah, the first thing I'd like to mention, I'm sure someone will mention it in the comments here, is that most people think, or most people assume, that wrestling is, pro wrestling, or whatever you want to call it, is fake. That everything is made up and the points don't matter. And to that, I have to say, that's not the word I would use to describe it. I would say it's scripted, which kind of gets at the idea of what everyone else is saying, that, you know, the match results are generally predetermined, yes, because usually when you're writing, it's like a story. Usually, you know, you're creating a match, and match is like a chapter in a story. And the idea here is, you know, when you're doing wrestling, is you're telling a story. Oh, I'm out of dirt. Do I have more dirt? Do I have to go back to my house? I might have to go back to my house. I might get to see me run to my house real quick here. But, yeah, wrestling is it definitely all real? No, it's not real. I wouldn't say it's 100% real, and you know, the Undertaker is not a demon from Death Valley. He's a guy from Houston, Texas, who happens to be very big and actually kind of old now. He's pretty old. He's not quite as good, or I wouldn't say good, I would say not quite as durable as it used to be, so he'll usually take only wrestles during WrestleMania season, which is coming up. It's going to be in New Orleans. I'll be watching it. Can't wait to see what goes on with that. But yeah, fake kind of implies that everything isn't real, and the outcomes may be predetermined. The storylines may be created to create entertainment, but the bumps and the slams and the things like that, even though they're protected, which means that, you know, I take precautions. So, you know, when the guy gets like DDT'd off the apron onto the floor, usually it's onto some kind of slightly padded surface, but that still hurts. That stuff still hurts. And, you know, there's also various ways that, you know, they perform moves like suplexes and stuff to make sure that the guy you're working with is not going to get injured by you. So, it's still real. It's still very, very real. You know, the body slams and, you know, hitting someone in the back with a chair still hurts, even though you're hitting them. That still stings. There's still things that are still very, very real and very, very painful to experience, no matter who you are. But yeah, scripted is the word that I would say. You know, obviously some things are also faked. A lot of the punching and the kicking is kind of mimed or otherwise enhanced. But there's definitely no absence of risk involved. You know, you cannot completely eliminate the risk of jumping off the top of a steel cage and trying to land on somebody. That still hurts when you miss, and still, you know, if you watch a lot of wrestling, no matter what organization you're watching, there are a lot of injuries. A lot of people get hurt still. That's why they say don't try this at home, even though these guys are professionals, is because, yeah, this shit is real. It's real. The slams and, you know, whatnot are real. So I would also advise don't try it at home, because it's stupid for you to try it at home. Just not the smartest thing to do. Oh yeah, and if you notice, all the ice is gone. If I forgot to mention it, Drew came by and helped me clean out most of it. Good guy, Drew. But yeah, you know. And in fact, I would also argue on the whole fake thing that kind of the best characters are the ones that aren't fake. Like, obviously, you know, in wrestling, everyone has a character, and sometimes you get the really goofy ones. Like, give you an example. Recently, obviously, those of you that watch WWE would know Fandango. He is a kind of like a Dancing with the Stars kind of dancer who also happens to be a wrestler, is his gimmick. And Johnny Curtis, the guy who plays him, really does a great job of selling the gimmick. It's, you know, it's kind of something you would think would be stupid and kind of 80s vintage-ish, where it's kind of goofy, and it is, but he does a really good job of getting into the character and making it enjoyable. And, you know, that's one thing, but really the best characters are the ones that are kind of an extreme projection or exaggeration of a wrestler's true self or their perceived self. And that's kind of an old thing that a lot of old wrestlers and a lot of old bookers, or people that handle the matches and, you know, writers and stuff like that, they all kind of say that to an extent. Like, the best characters are the ones that are kind of yourself, but amped up to another level. So, for example, you know, you have someone like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is, you know, when he was back in like WCW, he was like this clean kind of Hollywood kind of guy, and it didn't really work too well. Stunning Steve Austin was not a great gimmick, but when he became Stone Cold, he kind of became this exaggeration of this self that he has. He's from Texas, so yeah, he kind of became this exaggeration of a Texas redneck who kind of did what he wanted to do and didn't let the boss tell him what to do, and that kind of worked out well for him. And for example, another guy like let's say like a Mick Foley, especially when he became like the comedic Mankind, which would be like right after he turned face or a good guy, kind of developed this funny persona where he's this broken down old oaf of a wrestler who'd been around forever, and he was just kind of this you know, fun guy you'd want to go watch wrestle. And that's kind of, if you've ever read his books, it's kind of an extension of the guy he is, you know. But he could still kick your ass, and that is, I think, pretty good way to describe him, at least based on the books I've read that he's written. And I would say that worked out pretty well for him. And for example, you have a guy like The Rock, who is this Hollywood athlete kind of character, and yeah, both his when he was really popular in the 90s, and he was this cocky kind of jock kind of guy, and then when he came back as this cocky kind of Hollywood kind of guy, in both cases I think it worked out really well because he was kind of playing himself, but he was playing an exaggerated version of himself, and I think that works. I think I would agree that kind of works really well when you do that. Or other good examples would be a guy like Bret Hart, who was always kind of this very technical kind of guy, and he always carried that really technical kind of style in the ring, and I think it really suited him well. Or more modern example would be CM Punk, kind of the rebellious CM Punk who just does he's kind of like Austin, but not really, in that he doesn't so much do what he wants, but you know, he kind of has this rebellious streak to him. He's kind of got this I'm gonna do what I want to do, and just you try and stop me kind of mentality, where he's, you know, the best in the world. And I think that to an extent, and the reason I'm breaking this up is also because Punk was in the news lately because he quit WWE and has taken his ball and gone home. That's what made me think about talking about wrestling in the first place, because I really enjoyed his character, and now I'm not going to get to watch him do his thing for quite some time probably. I don't know when he'll come back, if he'll come back. He doesn't have to because he saved a lot of money in his career, so he's pretty well off. Do I have an axe, or do I have to make one? I may have to make one. Crap. You know, I'm just gonna make a wooden one. I don't really need to do a whole lot. Just grab some wood and do that. But yeah, you know, a lot of these guys are their best, you know, when they're doing stuff that's natural to them. And I guess that's why those kind of characters work so well, is because when you're playing an extension of yourself, or like an extreme version of yourself, and even YouTubers will do that, you know, once in a while when we're trying to do something, have fun and be silly and kind of play a character. I know Generic B kind of does that. He's even talked about the idea of, you know, when he gets into the B Team character and he kind of becomes this exaggerated version of himself who's like crazy about emeralds and whatnot. That kind of all ties into that too. And I would say as well that I've done that obviously in the past. Doesn't mean obviously that, you know, I'm not being myself. I am being myself, but sometimes, you know, you have a little fun and, you know, you get to play. You do. I don't wouldn't say you're trying to be fake and just be like, oh well, I am fake all the time. No, that's not it at all. But it's more like, you know, you can kind of, I guess you would say, enhance certain aspects of your personality for YouTube, which I've done. Like sometimes even know what a good example would be I've done recently. I haven't really done that much recently. Oh yeah, like the some of the stuff that pranking stuff that I've done. Obviously, I get a little, get a little more hyper with that, and it is kind of me in real life, but it's also not me in real life because I'm not like that all the time. But yeah, obviously with wrestling and whatnot, it's more of a character that you're playing all the time when you're going out there on stage and in the ring. But yeah, there's definitely a sense of realism with some characters. And I would also say, and I'll talk about this as well in a little bit, even some different types of wrestling, there's a sense of realism to it. Like Lucha Libre in Mexico, they take that stuff very seriously. There's very, very strict rules regarding, keeping one's identity secret when they're underneath the mask. They don't mess around with that stuff. That's not, that's not, hey, you don't go out in public and say, hey, I am, El Hijo de Blue Demon. No, you are El Hijo de Blue Demon. Like all the time, that is you, and people usually don't find out who these people are until they've died or they get unmasked in a Lucha de Apuestas match, which is usually a mask versus mask match. And they're in Mexico, they're really a big deal because your mask is your identity. So, having your identity revealed to the world is kind of like you've lost your personality and your job, almost, in a sense. You don't really lose your job, but you can't play that character anymore once you get unmasked. But obviously as well, I'll talk about Japanese style wrestling here. It's a lot more sport styled, I guess would be a good way to describe it. That's actually how they kind of describe it, is more sport styled than the entertainment style that we have here in North America. But actually, why don't I talk about it right now? So, as I mentioned, I do watch a bit of Puroresu, which is pro wrestling in Japanese, and it's their style of wrestling, which is a little more sport oriented. And in that, I mean that the punches and the kicks are actually real. So they have rules. You can't actually punch somebody with a closed fist. So you get a lot of slaps and kicks and chops, stuff like that when you're watching Japanese style wrestling. The style is a little bit stiffer and meant to look a little more real. So you do have some fancy moves, but you have a lot of stiff strikes and suplexes and slams and things like that. More so than kind of like on the indie scene where you have guys who are doing like 10 backflips and do it into an arm drag or something ridiculous like that. And trust me, I hate that stuff. It looks so stupid. But I can't really do too much about that because I don't own a wrestling promotion. Okay. But yeah, that's also something I can segue into as well in a minute here. But as it relates to actual wrestling, oh my goodness, that's a cave, and that's a big cave. But yeah, Japanese style is definitely, it's more, you don't get this big focus so much on these huge stories outside of the ring where you have all these promos and vignettes and promo packages and whatnot, like you would kind of this entertainment style that we have here in America and whatnot. You have more kind of storytelling that's done in the ring, and you may have a really short promo beforehand or a press conference. They take it a lot more, the style wise, they take it a lot more seriously. You get like press conferences and all these not story driven kind of matches. Sometimes you'll just have two guys fighting just to have two guys fighting, or maybe their storyline is they just don't like each other, and that's pretty much it. You don't have, you know, this guy stole my car and stole my woman kind of deals so much in Japanese style wrestling. But I enjoy it. And on the other hand, I would say, you know, some of the indie stuff, it depends on the promotion that you're watching. Some are good and some are very kind of crappy, and that kind of ties into something I mentioned a second ago and also wanted to bring up in this next little topic of discussion, which is what's wrong with wrestling nowadays and what don't I like about it. Do we have enough time to go over all this stuff? I don't think we have enough time to go over everything I don't like in wrestling, so I'll just pick out a few things of note. There's a couple there. Here we go. Here we go. Got a better axe now. Well, the modern stuff is, as far as the quality of the matches go, they're usually a little bit better than some of the vintage stuff, because, you know, the old school stuff, you have a lot of people have very limited movesets. You don't have a whole lot of, you know, counters and, you know, going back and forth, and even top rope moves are very weak. I mean, there was a while there where, like, Randy Savage's elbow drop was, like, the greatest thing that anyone had ever seen coming off the top rope. And his other, he had like two moves. He was like such an aerial guy, and he only had like two moves, and they were like the elbow drop, and he would do like an axe handle off the top rope onto the floor a lot, and it actually did cause him some problems later in his life. Unfortunately, he had a lot of issues relating to, I guess, his knees, I think, if I remember correctly, because this took a big toll on him. But it's kind of good for now, I think. Should have everything blocked up, and we'll just have to clear all this out eventually. And I don't think I'm going to smooth this out. I think I'm going to actually keep the hill part here, just to kind of give it a little bit of a different feel on this side. I might smooth it out a little bit, but I might do some constructive lock placing, I guess you could call it. Kind of create more of an interesting shape to it. But yeah, it's you know, back in the 80s, being able to do two things off the top rope would mean, you know, you were this high flying, kind of crazy, out of control dude. And nowadays, if you do, like, you know, everybody can do like one top rope thing off the top, you know, off the top rope, and it's not such a big deal anymore. So, you know, there's a lot more action, I guess you could say, and a lot more like back and forth and counters and flippy things, and that can kind of be a bit of a problem, because you get a lot of indie guys, especially, to get noticed. They'll be doing all these crazy flippy things, like they'll be doing, like I mentioned, you know, doing 6 flips and jumping on 3 different ropes and going into an arm drag or something small, ridiculous like that. It doesn't always work. I don't think I really like when people do that much, because it's kind of obvious that they're just doing it to get attention, and to me, it kind of takes away from some of the sense of realism. You want to always have, even though it is a sport or a entertainment venue where everything is predetermined, you have to have some kind of realism. You kind of have to have some expectation where people aren't sitting there saying, that doesn't make any sense what you just did. And a lot of times, especially with the indie guys, mostly, not so much the more professional, big name companies, except for one, which I will not mention by name, but they tend to have, you know, these little guys that get noticed. They tend to have these crazy, kind of insane things going on, and it's like, why are you doing that? You're being stupid. That doesn't look, believable at all. And that kind of irks me a little bit. From a match perspective wise, I kind of like something that, storyline wise you're telling and it makes sense. But you can have your flippy things, just make sure the flippy things don't look completely out of place. But that's really as far as matches go. I think that's the only thing I really can complain about. And they've kind of gotten away from a lot of the stupid stuff that it did in the 90s, where they would have like people taking chair shots to the head and all kinds of crazy inferno matches where they were setting people on fire, and all these things that, looking back, you're kind of like, man, that was dumb. Why did we cheer that on? That was idiotic of us as fans. But most of the other things I don't really like usually relate to the storytelling aspects, because that's kind of a thing I've always had an interest in. Is, that's usually why I watch wrestling, is if they're telling a good story, it interests me. If they're telling a good story, they're basically just telling a story with punches and kicks. So, if you could tell a really compelling story that gets my attention and makes me want to watch it, I'll watch it. If you're not telling a good story, I'm going to just say, screw it, I can go do something else with my time. And I usually do. But, let's see if I can finish this tree up, right? Clear the space out, and we'll plant some stuff in here and get this all ready to go. But, that's like the biggest issue, I think, is a lot of times with the stories, they are, reacting too quickly in some cases, that are not really acting quickly in others to trends, to their audience. They're basically, when they should be reacting quickly, they're sticking to their guns, and they're sticking to their guns when they when they should be sticking to their guns, they're just panicking and choosing to kind of, I guess you could say, overreact. I've seen that a lot, especially with some of their choices on who to kind of promote. Especially the whole story issue with people being angry about, Daniel Bryan. It usually is the one that most people will bring up, about him not getting pushed. Which, a technical term, getting a push means basically getting promoted, for those of you that don't know wrestling lingo. So, kind of getting that push into the main event and the spotlight. But, before him, it was other guys, in WWE that were popular, but were kind of being held back a little bit, and weren't getting that spotlight, or they were having other guys, not going to say who, John Cena, come in and kind of leech off that spotlight for their own character's purpose. Or even if they weren't doing it intentionally, the story was being written in a way that made it seem like that, and that's very damaging. That creates kind of a problem where you're not really getting these new guys. When you're writing a story, you have to come up with new characters all the time. It's kind of the same problem. Oh, I fell in a hole. It's kind of the same problem that, I would say that Marvel and DC and all these old comics fall into. You have your established stars, your Batmans and your Supermans, and you need to, at some point, create these new characters for people to follow. But, they may not latch onto it right away, and it may take a while, or it may take a really compelling writer to give that character some reason or some motivation that makes sense. It makes people really get behind that guy, and you panic. And when you panic, you decide that this guy is popular, so let's go ahead and just focus everything around him and reset everything. And that's a lot of the reason why, I don't think they'll admit it, but that's a lot of the reason why you have things like these universe-changing resets where it's not just, the little guys that get reset, it's the big guys. The whole story gets reset. Suddenly, Spider-Man, you're telling Spider-Man's origin story again. maybe in a slightly different manner, but you're still telling it again. And the problem with that also leads into my next issue, which is you're too reliant on these old school names, on people who were big years ago, on nostalgia, to push your current product at the expense of you guys. And you really can't do that. You can't do that in any business, because those new guys are eventually going to go away. This, especially in wrestling, this isn't DC Comics. You don't get to resurrect Batman 60 years from now and make him young again. One day, Stone Cold, Steve Austin, and The Rock, and Mick Foley, these guys, even if they're not really doing anything wrong by showing up, but at some point these guys are going to get old and they're not going to be able to be on TV anymore. They're not going to be able to help push your product, and when they can't do that, and you don't have somebody there to kind of be the new Rock or the new Stone Cold, someone who can get that kind of attention, then you have a pretty big problem, because how are you going to grow? You're going to have to either grow your new stars and find a way to get them out there, or you're going to be stuck just with these people who are attached to these one wrestlers, and they like these guys from the 80s, and they don't give a crap about the guys from the 90s, but you need them to give a crap about the guys from the 90s. Why have I been here? Oh, and C-Matt was on earlier, and keeps starving to death and then logging off. I don't know what happens. I don't know what he's up to at all, but I don't know. I wish I knew what he was up to. But yeah, it's from a perspective of someone who's a storyteller myself. You can't do that. You can't kind of tie yourself to the nostalgia boat and then hope that people will just kind of accept these new guys or these new characters without any sense of building them up and giving them a reason to care about these new characters. I'm going to make sure that all these trees are growing back. They cut a whole bunch of them down earlier. And there's other things that kind of irk me as well, like the even Steven booking you get. Wins and losses don't matter, something that you hear from people a lot of days, or supposedly it's what people within the companies are saying nowadays. They do matter over the long run. They don't matter in the short term. But they do kind of matter in establishing whether you can take a character seriously or not. And truth be told, I think they matter a little more than some people are willing to admit. I also mentioned, look at my notes here. I also mentioned that you have a lot of shorter programs or shorter storylines instead of longer ones, meaning the stories are constantly changing, and it doesn't really matter who wins and loses because they're going to be fighting some other guy of the week in 2 weeks anyways. So you don't give people a compelling reason to keep tuning in. I feel like they're trying to fight this. At least WWE is trying to fight this and trying to establish some longer term storylines, but they haven't gotten it yet for some reason. I want to go ahead and check something here. See if I have any more cobble, or if I have to go home and grab some. No, I don't have any more cobble because I have one more thing to do. I just realized, and that is to go down on the bottom and finish off that one little wall segment. And I'm gonna have to fill in underneath there as well, because that's kind of a hazard. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna finish it off camera at this point, because I've just taken a look at my time and I've been going for 30 minutes. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I don't like about it, and there's some things I do like about it. So I don't know how I feel about the state of modern wrestling. I feel like it could be better, but it also could be a lot worse. So I guess it's one of those things where maybe I'll have to keep an ear and an eye on it every once in a while and just listen to what's going on and see if I'm interested. to see if I keep watching. If I don't keep watching, then oh well, no big deal. So I have, yep, okay, I have some cobble here. So I'm gonna go ahead and I am gonna finish this up off camera, and I'm gonna do some stuff for next time I'm on here. But I'm just gonna say thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening to me ramble about pro wrestling a little bit. Promise I won't talk about it too much. But yep, as always, I will see you next time here on the VintageBeef Fan Server, and I can tell you that we're gonna have something fun planned for next time you see me. So take care, and I will hopefully see you soon.